Well, good morning. My name is Greg Sizemore. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Construction Users Roundtable, and we want to welcome you to this next in a series entitled The Road to Recovery. You may recall for quite some time we were hosting two of these per week entitled Construction in Crisis, bringing you owner and contractor legal perspectives and others that we felt you needed to know as you found your way through this whole pandemic crisis. While we're still in crisis mode, I think in the country, we're going to be a little bit more positive and aggressive with CURT, and we're calling it now the Road to Recovery. And we want to thank you for joining us. The reason we have these webinars is very simple. Our goal is to make you a better, more well-informed, and more well-connected decision maker. Singularly, we don't have all the answers. Collectively, we're a powerful force with a lot of solutions, and you never know where the answer to one of your challenges might be here in the CURT organization. So we want to connect and network with a purpose and help you in your own road to recovery personally. I also want to recognize our sponsors. Today's sponsor is the NCCER, the National Center for Construction Education and Research. Without their generous help, these things would probably have fees to them, as there are costs to produce and organize and arrange and that sort of thing. So thank you, NCCER, for sponsoring. If you'd like to sponsor, just contact Rana DeBro at our office, and she'll be glad to help you find a sponsor. I want to also let you know that our awards program deadline has been extended. We had some folks give us feedback that, hey, with COVID and working from home, it's made the application process and getting the information we needed a little bit more challenging. We've heard that input, and we've extended those awards application deadline to August the 10th. So if you had one on the burner or you still like to consider submitting, we have them in the safety category, we have them in the workforce category, we have them in project excellence category. Again, for more information, contact Rana or Rob at the CURT office, and they can guide you through that process. I want to tell you that today's event, the best way to get a good experience is to mute your line, but if it is appropriate to do so, we would ask you to activate your video camera. Doing so gives us a little bit greater sense of presence. So if you can activate your camera and allow those who are presenting to see you while keeping your mic muted until the appropriate time, I'm sure they would appreciate it, and so would I. We're going to get started here momentarily, right into our panel discussion. If you have a question, you probably know by now that the Zoom technology has a little chat box at the bottom. If you just hover your mouse over this screen right here, you'll see it pop up. And if you have a question, feel free, or a comment, feel free to use the chat box. Others have texted me over the course of the last several months, and that chat box will enable us to kind of see your question before we get around to it. And if your question isn't answered for some reason, we'll make sure you get connected with the appropriate person to answer it. Once this event is over with, this afternoon, you're going to get a recording of the event. We encourage you to send it out to you and your, obviously your organization and others in your company who may not be able to make it today. You'll get a bio and contact information for all the speakers. There is no PowerPoint slide deck today, but generally you would get a copy of the slide deck, and you'll get an invitation to our newsletter as well as advanced registration for our next event. I would also invite you to CURT.org website, where we have the August events shaping up rather well. We invite you to be a part of those August 24th, 25th, and 26th. They are all virtual, so it'll be low cost for you to attend, and your organization, others in your organization to attend. So be mindful of those events coming up soon in August. We will have other topics that'll be promoted on the Road to Recovery seminars. That's what you're experiencing right now, and you folks will get advance notice for that. Well, let's get started today. I'm very happy that we have a panel from three different verticals: automotive, chemical, and in the utility industry. And we're discussing their company's response to the COVID-19 pandemic and how they've pivoted, and what are the challenges, what are the surprises, what perhaps are the watch-outs as we discuss how owners are kind of picking up the pieces and moving forward in context of this new normal. Joining us first is Mike Mayra. He is the construction group manager at General Motors with over 35 years of worldwide experience, a very staunch supporter of CURT. It's been good to know Mike over these many years. Badar Alam is also with us. He's the construction competency leader with the Chemours Corporation, formerly with DuPont for over 30 years of experience. And last but not least is Mark Sanzenbacher. He's the senior project manager with American Transmission Company with nearly 15 years of experience and an adjunct professor, an esteemed adjunct professor at the University of Wisconsin. So gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for your time. Thank you for prep time. And we're going to jump right into things right now. Some of these questions that I'm asking, and there's a list too long probably to cover by noon, and we've tried to prioritize them. And again, if we don't get to your question, we will get to your question. Just let Rana know what it is and who you need to talk to about it. Also use the chat box. First question, fellas. What do you feel is the most profound impact that this pandemic has had on your capital project program? We have no preferences to who goes first. Mike, Mark, Badar, who wants to lead us off with that question?
I'll start it off. Greg.
Thank you, Mike. Go right ahead.
So at General Motors, we've gone through a total reevaluation of our entire capital program, as well as our asset sustainment program, given the fact we've had just endured a 6-week strike last fall, and now a stoppage of production this year on March 18th due to COVID-19. Those two events meant a lot of cash drain with no revenue coming in. Because of that, we've had to selectively review what capital programs we would be canceling or delaying. Our asset sustainment program is taking a big hit, and many other projects are being delayed. We have continued construction work for our full-size truck program at Flint and Arlington. Many of our office transformation projects at the Global Tech Center in Warren, Michigan were stopped. However, we slowly restarted manufacturing at 4 plants on May 11th and began regular production at 22 plants between May 18th and June 1st, and now are up to full production. Construction is now in full swing for our battery electric vehicle projects in Detroit, Lordstown, Ohio, and Mexico.
Great. Thank you for that review, Michael. A quick follow-up question. When you say you've reviewed these capital programs, what are some of the key elements? Obviously, market demand perhaps goes into it, but on the construction or capital improvement side, capital project side, what are some of the key elements that you use to distill and help you make the right decision?
Well, I think it really comes, further up the line than construction, and taking a look at what are the important programs that are going to sustain General Motors in the future, and making sure that we're going to concentrate and pick those programs that we feel are going to be the key ones to keep General Motors successful. So I think that's probably what we've done. I know there's good programs we're going to have to delay, but we've just had a lot of cash drain over the last number of months. And if we're not selling vehicles, well, there's, money only going out one way. There's only so much capital that we have to spend.
Great response. Mark and Badar, what are the most profound impacts that this pandemic has had on your all's operation?
Yeah, from my end and the Chemours end, Greg, I guess it would be very similar to what we just heard from Mike in terms of it's been profound. When we initially started to experience COVID and its impacts, we saw sort of the cash inflow be significantly impacted, downturn in terms of the performance of our businesses, and in turn one of the key principles that we wanted to hold to was, as many organizations do at points of difficulty, is cash is king. So had to really reprioritize where we want to spend our money and really limit the capital projects that we were going to execute to the ones that were absolutely necessary from a safety, health, environmental, legislative standpoint, and those that had very significant return on investment in the near term.
Great, thanks, Badar. Mark, care to weigh in?
Sure. in the utility industry, specifically ATC, we are experiencing with current construction projects a slowdown in performance for a variety of reasons. There's now less people at the work site. There's time needed for cleaning, disinfecting. There's also delays in getting issues taken care of from those that are remotely located. So that's what we're seeing with the current construction. Future projects, those are being scrutinized a little more with their impact to the electrical grid. So some capital projects are being delayed because of the impact that they may have on the grid. And so we're kind of slowing down the pace of our construction.
Thanks. You know, we all have virtual, or we all need project teams to manage these projects. And from the look of some of y'all's backgrounds, it looks like you're still working from home. Talk to us about your challenge of managing the project team virtually, and what technologies are you using, perhaps even new technologies you've introduced that you've been forced to review. Badar, do you want to start us off with that? Talk to us about managing the virtual project team, technologies used or new technologies evaluated for improving future performance.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I think it's a great question, and to be quite honest with you, we're still working through the solution, right? Is where we're exploring and trying to figure out how to evolve ourselves. But what's become really key for us is that more than ever, communication becomes the absolute hallmark of success. And for us, we want to, we've used Microsoft Teams as a core tool, and we've tried to train our organization, put out virtual training courses for the organization in terms of how to use that tool most effectively, how to store information, how to retrieve information, how to be able to manipulate and share information across that tool. And I think we're getting better and better at it every day. In addition to that, I think we're looking to explore how technology, both from a execution standpoint as well as an overall project effectiveness standpoint, can be employed. And so this slowdown has given us an opportunity to analyze where our strengths, where our opportunities of improvement are. And so we're looking at things like advanced work packaging, leaning out our project system, improving the culture in terms of how we execute and how we interact with within our own teams as well as our contract partners. So those are the big sort of areas and focus and how I think we're evolving. Greg.
So Mark, you probably heard some echoes of that in your own organization. Care to weigh in?
Yeah, like Badar said, communication is king right now. Mm-hmm. Being able to move forward. So you have to pay as a project manager. You need to spend more time in make sure everything is communicated because we have most of the team that cannot be out at the job site, to look at problems, etc. So there's, the team senses some frustration about, well, if, I need to see it. And so we've employed, things like drones. It's not a new technology, but it's something, very worthwhile, especially if we have an issue or issues on a transmission line. We can fly that line. We've also started using 360-degree photography. And this is new to everybody at ATC because we've never used that before. What it does is allow you to get a 3D complete around you view of whatever you're looking at, substation, whatever. So We're working with those things where people are getting up the learning curve on these kinds of things, and we're having to utilize video and photography to help us keep the guys working on the field.
Mike, anything to add to that?
I guess not really a whole lot, Greg. We're doing some of the very similar some things that Mark and Vidar are doing. Our training organization has been providing us with some really great videos on making sure that we can utilize the collaboration tools, to their fullest. I would say one thing where we haven't been really successful is trying to employ some of these types of tools on the construction site. So we are still having our project managers reside on the construction site. We have very strict COVID-19 protocols, managing the safety of all the workers on site. And thankfully, to date, we've not had any site issues.
Great news. Again, congratulations to you on that. That's huge given the size of your program. So let's talk for a few minutes about the contractor relationship. Obviously, this is a collaborative effort now more than ever in any time in our history. Collaborate, communicate, etc. How has this pandemic affected the relationship you have with your contractors? Has it been more challenging, less challenging? Have you amped up your game? Have you found that it's forced you into a deeper, more intimate relationship with them? Any comments on contractor relationship changes?
Well, I think from my perspective, we've gotten closer to our contractors, and we're working lockstep through the the COVID CDC things that we need to be doing, and we're helping them make sure that that's being deployed. We're helping them wherever we need to. We're kind of more of an equal partner when it comes to that.
Yeah,
Michael?
Yeah, from my perspective, I think it's a little bit of a mixed bag. So I think certainly the interdependence that we have amongst ourselves and our contract partners has been amplified and accelerated, and I think that there is a stronger cohesion there. But there's also been some challenges as well, right? In terms of adhering to the new work environment, as I'm sure everybody's organization is. We were very, our number one priority is around the health and safety of our workforce, whether it be Chemours resources or contract resources, and we put in some pretty stringent and sometimes challenging work requirements and safety requirements, and some strong consequences associated with those. And I think that's led to some discomfort, some questioning from some of our contract partners in relationship to what they may be seeing or experiencing elsewhere. So I think, like always, it's as long as we can have a purposeful discussion and align on the end results, we've seemed to come to a good end spot, and I see it as a good foundation to further the strength of these relationships. Many of our contract partners have been at our sites for years, and almost behave and act and have the same level of ownership for our Chemours assets as the core Chemours employees.
Yeah,
Mark?
I think it's very important that you're making regular connections with either your internal team members and also your external team members and the contractors. People are going to have, very different reactions to working at home. At a time when we were practicing, social distancing and self-isolation, it's really too easy for all of us to turn inward and focus on ourselves and say, no, geez, this is terrible. What are we doing? How can we do this? So caring for your team is one way of fighting the effects, I think, of the self-isolation. I think you need to show empathy, and engaging in helpful actions can increase the team's social connections. So while it may be you be keeping your physical distance from others to prevent the spread of this virus, it doesn't mean you need to be emotionally distant. And I think showing concern and staying connected for your team members is very important. And as you said earlier, I think it's also important to try to get team members to use the video, because if there's just a blank screen and all you hear is a voice, you don't really catch a lot of what's, you can't see what somebody's reaction is to when you're talking.
Right.
So it's the video is not as good as, a personal one-on-one, face-to-face with each other, but at least you've got a little more body language and a little understanding of what somebody's going through or feeling.
That's a great point. Badar and Mark, what other kinds of project teams dynamics have you seen emerge? Michael kind of teed that next question up for us in terms of, he talked about social empathy, and he talked about improved social interaction and requiring the video camera to be activated to give a sense of presence. Have there been any other dynamics that you've noticed in your project team? Have you added additional personnel or capability to your project team so that it can be more effective in what has to be done? Thoughts, Mark or Badar?
Well, I think being a utility, most people have been working in an office that aren't actually in construction. So now they've been forced to work at home, and it's a different ball game. So what I found myself doing is helping them get oriented to working remotely, and fortunately our IT group is doing a good job, but there's still the this change in dynamics now for people, and especially those that haven't done it at all or done it very not so much. And so it's a new experience, and you try to help them through it and that kind of thing. So that's helped a lot. I don't think we've employed any new technology in the communication aspect. We're just relying heavily on what we had, and so far it's working very well. And I would say since mid-March, the bulk of the company's been working remotely, and it's like nothing has changed. We were able to get things done. Sure, there's maybe some connectivity issues once in a while, but everybody's able to get their work done. So
I think that's going to be the major shift moving forward. Now that we figured out that we can do this, what about that big old office building that's sitting empty back there? Badar, any additional comments you'd like to offer on project team cohesiveness?
Yeah. So, Greg, I guess from my perspective, I think I'm seeing an evolution in our organization. When we first started working from home, I guess it would probably have been early March or thereabouts. Saw a lot of disconnects, some discomfort in terms of how people interacted, what they were able to sort of share, and how they would process information, especially challenging questions. And so there was some obstacles, some discomfort in doing that over a computer and over a web meeting. But I think what I'm starting to see now is we're evolving and we're growing, and people are getting more and more comfortable. Recently, we had a project where the budget that was sort of projected at gate 3 at the end of FEL3 was quite a bit higher than what we had in FEL2 or gate 2 review. And as we're in a challenging environment, and so we wanted to make sure that we were as tough as we could be on ourselves and on the project scope, so that we can meet the business expectations that we'd set forth in the gate 2. And going through that process and watching the team and how they worked and how that grew, and how initially people were somewhat quiet and subdued, and by the end of it we had some good emotional discussions, and I think we ended up with a very good result, and so not quite the same way or the same level of engagement and sort of a relationship building that we would have had if we had a face-to-face interaction, but I think we're getting closer and closer.
Outstanding. What is the one thing that you would tell your contractors? I want to go back there for just a moment. What do you think contractors need to understand or need to know that perhaps they didn't have a clear understanding of pre-pandemic?
Good question. I guess from my perspective is I think partnership becomes more and more important. Historically, maybe we were, sort of an us and them, and I always hate that myself. But as organizations, we can sometimes get that way. Is hey, this is my arena, and this is where I play, and this is my role, and this is where I add effectiveness or not, and then now I think what we're really saying is, hey, this environment that's in front of us is very dynamic. None of us can predict, and we sort of have to share risk and share reward. And let's figure out a synergistic model where we can really improve the overall effectiveness of our execution model and approach versus sort of a win-lose approach that maybe again, as much as we'd like to avoid, we were heading towards in the past.
Yeah, that's great insight, Badar, and tip of the hat to you for that. It's where we needed to be all along, and it'd be interesting to do a deeper dive on that in the future, somewhere along the line. Mike or Mark, what would you tell your contractors? What's one thing you feel that they need to know about you and your operation that maybe they didn't understand pre-pandemic, or something that's evolving now for them?
Yeah, so I would think it's a matter of having to have more trust with each other. And I think that can only happen as you work with each other and sort of test each other and have that creating those kinds of bonds and relationships to develop trust. Because the way we're working now, when everybody is apart, I think it's more important than ever to make sure that we can develop a trust with our partners.
Mark, I want you to weigh in just a minute, but what I'm hearing are what we used to call soft skills. Kind of made fun of them, frankly. And you know what I think they're becoming? They're becoming mission critical business skills. Trust, collaboration, communication, partnership, empathy. All those words have been mentioned in the first 30 minutes of this event. Those are nothing they teach you in school. Those are not technical capabilities. Those are personal capabilities. We used to call them soft skills and sometimes sneer at them, the alpha dogs among us, but frankly, they are becoming essential mission critical business skills. And perhaps it's time to rename those, change the narrative. Mark, you want to weigh in?
I just echo what Mike has been saying, that we need to build more trust and know that in this situation, we're in this thing together. And so it isn't like, they're working for us and they're going to do their thing, we're going to do our thing. We want to do this together. So this has been kind of evolving as we've been going on since March. And so I think it's working very well. And so I think that's the key right now.
Let's talk a little bit about accountability. So people are working all over the country, and certainly all over or near you folks as well remotely. How are you building an accountability into the virtual lifestyle? How do you make sure things get done or people understand what needs to be done? And I've heard a lot lately about the most effective way to do remote business is to block your time, and maybe from 7:30 to 10 it's business, but from 10 to 11 you can go to the grocery or take the dog out, and then from 11 to 2. So blocking time. How are you folks approaching virtual effectiveness?
Well, Greg, I think you've kind of touched on it. You really need to be able to make sure that you're setting times aside to do some different things. Working remotely at home, you're stuck in your office or whatever that area is, you're working all day long. You need to get up, whether it's 11 o'clock in the morning, go out for a walk or a run or a bike ride. You have to take those times for yourself, because I find myself at times, because I'm working on a project now that's also dealing with the Koreans, I can start at 6:30 in the morning. I'm not done till after 9 o'clock at night on some days. And you can let yourself go a little stir crazy. So you have to be careful to set some time aside purposefully to do that, or your work is just going to start to slow down, and you're not going to be happy because you're stuck all day long. So I think you need to get away and do some things. It's a different type of environment now than when we're in an office. You can get up and leave and do other things that you need to do.
Yeah, I think that's so true. When we're in the office, and we may take a coffee break, for so to speak, or stop by somebody's office for a brief chat, but it's entirely, which gives us a little variety and emotional rest, but it's entirely different at the house. Mark or Badar, you care to weigh in on that? And I think we've kind of morphed into how do you take the mental temperature of your team, and how important is it to to monitor KPIs or to build accountability into a virtual lifestyle?
Yeah. So, Greg, from my perspective, I think we've always relied on people to self-manage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Within our organization, you're expected to figure out how you need to work, where you need to work, and to deliver the specific output that is requested from you in terms of your role or specific projects that you have. And so we've tried to sort of retain that and maintain that. Is we're allowing people to self manage and to make sure that we have a clear set of deliverables and requirements and goals and objectives. And as long as that's there, we're counting on. And I think we've been, the organization has responded very well. We have self-managed, and we're giving people the fluidity to work the way they need to work to realize those goals. And we were actually doing that in Chemours even ahead of this pandemic. We have a process, I guess, or a system or a policy called Flex Your Day. So even before COVID, if you needed to work from home, if you needed to, be away for a certain amount of time, you were empowered and enabled to do that as long as you met the objectives. And so I think we're continuing to behave that way and continuing to rely on our organization to self-manage. I think the second part of your question is also an interesting one in terms of right now. What I feel from our organization is there's this little bit of unknown. Historically, when we've been in the office, you have a pretty good understanding of pace, what's coming, and when it's coming, and job security and path forward. And I think there is underlayment of discomfort there in terms of, hey, we probably, like many organizations, we internalized a lot of our work. So where we could, we took work from contract resources and internalized that to make sure our resources were fully engaged and employed. And having done that, now there's a question around, hey, if this doesn't change, if the dynamic doesn't change, what happens, and what does my life look like? What does my career and future look like? And what the organization's been doing, and I think, again, a very good job of, is interactions at various levels. So we're holding town hall meetings from the corporation, from the CEO, the COO, down to our engineering organization level, down to our specific work group levels, and having those communications and ability to have open questions I think is again not fully resolved the discomfort that individuals may have, but I think it's gone a long way towards at least buffering that.
The other question I have is, what part of this will stick? This virtual lifestyle, this project management from afar of billions of dollars worth of work, what part of this will stick? in your opinion? I mean, there's a lot of talk that this has been a major business earthquake, and it has positive outcomes: productivity, less travel time, less cost for TNL. You know, I talked to one owner not too long ago who's a member of CURT, will remain unnamed, who said at any one time pre-pandemic they had 5,000 rental cars on the road alone in one day, day after day after day. A lot of that money is being saved now. TNL budgets being reduced. What part of this will stick for the future? Thoughts?
Well, for us at General Motors, we've been on an office transformation mode for about the last 4 or 5 years. We have been really reducing the amount of office space that we actually require, and it's really how people are working. And so we've seen this working collaboratively a lot with the people coming out of school, and I think we've done a lot of studies to see how many people are actually sitting in their desk, and the percentages were pretty low. And so what we've basically done is nobody has their own desk anymore, not even our senior executives. They have a workspace, and people go to different workspaces every day. What I'm going to see now is that even those spaces that we've reduced, they're going to be reduced even smaller because there'll be people working from home. I think we're going to allow people to be much more flexible. If they can get their work done at home and they're effective and productive, then I see that our office spaces are going to get even significantly reduced from where they are, where we were originally headed.
That's a mighty big office you have downtown Detroit. I've seen it, Michael. It might make some nice condos one day, right? Mark, you care to weigh in?
Sure. The utility industry is famous for being in offices, and the only employees that are not in the office are actually doing construction. That's been the way it's been for a long time. So will this now stick? I don't know. It might be. It might happen. It might morph into different things, but ATC has found out that they can do just as be as good at doing all the things that they need to do with people working from home. So that has turned on a light bulb. But
no pun intended there, folks.
Yeah. But it's going to be up to senior management to kind of get past the paradigm that we've always been in to break free. So I guess it's a wait and see.
So I want to go back to the contractor relationship, because I think that's so critical as far as viewing them now as partnerships, team members, equals at the table, not a tit for tat, win, lose, sink or swim, survive or perish. What skill sets and capabilities do contractors need to begin to develop to work in this new normal from an owner's perspective? Again, it's merely opinion, it's not gospel, but you've got 3 people that I have a ton of respect in. What would you ask our contractors to do, or begin to think about doing, or engaging, or offloading, or embracing as we move forward? Who's first?
Well, I think from my perspective, it is communicating more than they usually do, and in different ways, and embracing different ways of communication, either through Teams or Skype or Zoom, something that they haven't done before. So I think this will be something that they will need to do more often, and it'll help them, because now they don't have to spend money having like the general foreman come to ATC office for a project team meeting. He can do it, participate by video from his location, and he's more productive.
Mike or Bedard?
Well, I would say that the contractors, the construction industry has basically been, over the years has been slow to change. They're kind of just very difficult. So I think they have to be ready to embrace change as a way that things are going to move. I think transparency is another item, that we have to be much more transparent working with each other. And that's something that's going to take some time to do. And lastly, I think they need to be agile. They need to be able to move quickly when the demand for change happens. They've got to be able to jump to be able to do that and to do it effectively if they want to continue to be, partners with us.
Let me dive just a minute or two on that particular point, Mike. I know that General Motors quickly went from making cars to producing PPE and ventilators. What kind of yes, talk to us about that agility requirement and areas where you may have stubbed your toe or areas where you really got in front of things and soared to your surprise. Thoughts?
To me, it's a really great story. We started working with the government and Ventec to explore how we could make these high pressure ventilators. It was in late March.
Right.
And to our dismay, our president got on television and said we were dragging our heels, which could be nothing further from the truth. I know because I had one of my project managers was working in Kokomo, Indiana to convert one of the manufacturing buildings that had made electric components into a facility to manufacture ventilators. We did this not to profit, but to help the nation fight the coronavirus. Nearly all the tools to assemble the ventilators that GM is manufacturing are 3D printed. Most are 3D printed nests or fixtures that hold the parts in place during assembly. These nests were reverse engineered from part data that we received from Ventec out of Seattle. And then we created these 3D printing to allow us to make these changes rapidly to put these fixtures together so we could make the ventilators. So in less than 2 months, we gutted the facility, we retooled the manufacturing space, trained volunteers, because we actually had volunteers actually working along with the UAW, and delivered the first ventilators to hospitals in Chicago. And we plan to ramp up production to be able to manufacture 30,000 ventilators by the end of August. So to me, it was a great story of how we were able to work with our contractors quickly, our supply chain, the labor that we had discussion with the union labor to make sure we could get the right people that we wanted in to do this very quickly. And to me, it turned out to be a great success.
That sounds like a terrific case study and presentation, maybe at a future CURT event. Virtual, of course, likely. Badar, Mark, how have your operations changed? I mean, you're a multi-state provider of electric transmission services, Mark. What were some of the things to assure reliable energy delivery during this time when everybody was told to go home and hide in the basement?
Well, one of our first priorities was to maintain the reliability of the electrical grid. And as I alluded to before, we put extra into the projects that are coming in and maintenance work that we kind of wanted to make sure that stayed up. We have an incident command structure. So when we have bad weather, catastrophic event occurs, we stand up a team. Well, we did that for COVID. And, right away they determined, the system operators and support them directly need to be isolated away from everybody else. So they decided that, okay, in middle of March, we sent, about 550 people home to work from there. And so we didn't treat it any differently than we would if a tornado came through and knocked out a few lines. It's the same structure. It's just a different catastrophe.
Fascinating. Badar, anything to add to that?
Well, from our perspective, Greg, I guess I reach back to one of your previous questions to I guess give you some perspective from my view, anyways, and then hopefully more wider view. You asked about what maybe the contractors need to do differently or work differently, And from my perspective, it's actually probably as much a behavioral and cultural shift and a mindset shift than anything else, right? Certainly, almost all the contractors we work with bring a high level of skills to the table, strong set of tools that they employ in doing their work. What I think would be ideal for both us in the owner's role as well as from our contract partners is if we can sort of come to a mutual mindset, right? I think we, as the owner, need to think about from a contractor's perspective. Hey, what are they really trying to achieve? And if I was sitting on that side of the table, what would I be looking to do, and what would I be looking to influence, and what's keys to my success? And so from the contractor perspective, I guess I would like them to think about the owner's mindset and put yourself in the shoes of the owner and figure out where you can add value to that side of the equation, because you're certainly doing your side well. But now if you can add some additional ingredients to the owner side, provide some key inputs into the front end loading process, talk about execution strategy and influence that to make the productivity of the labor force in the field more effective. Those kinds of things I think would be highly valued from an owner's perspective. And in terms of I guess the second question and the impact, I think one of the bigger things that I've seen, Greg, from our organization is on the people side. Initially, we had very well-defined and technical roles that individuals were fitting in. Your lead design in E&I, you're a process engineer, you're a construction manager, you're a craft professional, whatever have you. And as we've integrated and as the scope of the projects is narrowed, what I found is that we need a lot more diversity in skill and individuals that have that diversity that can work across. I'm not only a strong designer, but I can help you with some document control elements, or I can help with scheduling and adding some inputs and learning the scheduling software relatively quickly. Those kinds of things I think are being valued, and I think again if we retain some of this flow, I think multi-skilling will also be a key differentiator for individuals and organizations.
Great response, Badar. Thank you. Michael or Mark, anything that answer prompted you'd like to add? Hearing none, we've got about 10 minutes or so, and I'm going to just invite the audience, if you have a question, go ahead and just activate, rather than use the chat box, activate your microphone and ask away. And while you think about what you might want to ask, I think, Kevin, from Impact, you've got a question for us. Is that correct? Go ahead.
Yeah, Greg, great comments on the CCC collaboration in Kokomo. It was really great story. Oddly enough, I had Latino Magazine open to the page where they featured that, which was very cool. But I'd like to ask the panelists, how has the bump in the unemployment rate, the $600 a week, affected them, if at all?
I don't think it affected us at all.
Yeah, Kevin, are you talking about employees, us, or I don't, maybe you could clarify your question a little bit.
In terms of getting people back to work, there's been some economic news that maybe the $600 a week for the construction people who've been laid off is more desirable than, putting on the tools and getting back to work. And I'm just wondering, how far-fetched that is, or how spot an issue at all.
Well, on our construction sites, so far we have not seen too many issues with not getting the people that we need to construct our projects. So it's still kind of early on some of these projects where we haven't really, staffed up to where we're going to need some higher levels. We'll see probably later this summer, but maybe by then I think that 600 is scheduled to run out, I think, fairly quickly, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Kevin, from our perspective at Chemours, We haven't seen any real impact ourselves either. We are getting about, we did stop work at several of our sites in terms of construction due to health issue concerns, and now we're bringing people back starting early part of July in many locations. And we're getting about 90 to 95% of the resources that we had previously in terms of the craft labor back at our sites. And the 5% that we're losing have been usually lost to other work, so not to unemployment or people deciding that the benefits for not returning to work are better than sort of coming back and joining the workplace again.
Kevin, while we've got you on the line, number one, I didn't recognize you in the beard. I swear I didn't. It looks good on you. But number two, can you share with us maybe a sentence or two about what the ironworkers or maybe organized labor in general has what they've done to respond to this crisis? One of the last things I think the owners need on their plate is any grievances or dissatisfaction. So we all want to be reasonable, collaborative, and all those things that, frankly, you, the ironworkers, and the building trades have over the years responded to. Anything you want to share with us that you think might be helpful in knowing about how organized labor is responding to this?
Well, I think, Greg, that it's, obviously one of the main things that's near and dear to all of our hearts, not just the ironworkers or their associated building trades union, is the health and safety of everybody that gets up and goes to work every day. So right off the bat, we're very aggressive in adopting the CDC guidelines, and you've seen different owners take even more aggressive measures, which have been largely certainly endorsed. I'd be lying if I didn't say that there are people that had some concerns about productivity, because you're asking guys in the field to wear a lot of different equipment than they're used to combat the virus and stuff. But, by and large, it's been taken in stride. The people that feel comfortable going back to work masked up have gone back to work, and those that aren't, that's their personal preference, just like everybody else. Not everybody feels comfortable going to Home Depot or the grocery store or whatever the case may be. But it's been very satisfying to see, when we have conducted webinars giving guidance to our contractors and the local unions around North America, just a massive swell in response and attentiveness to those things. Kind of interesting, just like everybody else, and it's kind of be a quick follow-up question, is we saw a significant drop-off in March in terms of work. April was an absolute disaster. And then at the end of this past month, I think we're all back up and running. And I was wondering if, in the comments of the panels, they're probably in the same situation in terms of ramping up work again.
Ramping up work, what does your crystal ball look like? Badar, Mark, and Mike.
Well, for General Motors, our battery manufacturing project in Lordstown, Ohio, we are just starting the caissons right now. So we'll be swinging steel in another month, and it's going to go really fast and heavy. We've got over 3 million square feet that we're building, and some of it's fairly heavy steel, so we're going to have a lot of work. So I hope we can get the workers that we need to do that. We're also having some work down in Detroit Hamtramck as well. So we're gearing up around the U.S. now. We have some delays on some projects, but I'd say by July, August, September, we'll be very busy.
Badar, Mark, care to weigh in?
Yeah, for us, we certainly started to accelerate the field work, and some sites have been working, and some projects have been working throughout the COVID crisis in March. Certainly had reduction in field resources in almost every site. The one dynamic that isn't changed is the relative volume. So we ended up reducing the overall capital spend based on COVID and the business dynamics, and I don't think that's projected to change. We had a call with our senior leadership just a couple of days ago, so that's still, they're still holding true to that unless we see a significant change in the global marketplace. But the nice thing that I took away from the discussion was that when we look at next year, they're projecting the capital spend to be pretty well consistent with what the pre-COVID spend was for 2020. So 2021 is looking, pretty consistent with and relatively positive. And so I think the business is currently thinking and hoping for return to somewhat normal spend rates by the end of this year.
That's great news. Mark?
Well, in the utility industry and ATC and specifically, we haven't seen back in March and April a decrease in the work that we had and the contractors that we had. So they've been pretty stable. It's the material that we need to do that job that in March and April, it was almost nothing. And now that's ramping up here. And in late in June is when the vendors are starting to get things back together and start delivering material.
Fantastic. Fellas, I know we've only got a couple of minutes remaining. Is there a question you thought we would ask that needed to be answered?
I'd say, I think the last one did with lessons learned from the experience we had with COVID. And I have basically 3 simple things. One is that we're able to, or we can work remotely with success. We can work on the fly, and we can get work done quicker than we thought would be possible. But that only happens if senior leadership and executives stay out of the way.
Yes.
See, after 34 years, you can say things like that on a recorded thing and get away with it. God love Michael. Any Badar and Mark, any comments on that? Is there a question you thought we had asked or lessons learned? That was actually our last one.
That's a key one. I think, there are several lessons that we've learned. And as I was saying earlier, we had this flex your day policy where employees were empowered and able to work from home. But when that actually was tried and put in place, several resources, having candid conversations with them, their managers were not really comfortable with it. Yeah, okay, if you need to work for a day, okay, and do you really need to? And I'd rather have you in the office. And I think that's changed significantly. So the managers, leadership, I think have awoken to this reality and to the fact that, hey, the work is still getting done. We are still impactful, and in some ways maybe we can be a little bit more dynamic and we can enhance the quality of life that our people have. And if we can do that, then they're going to be better employees and bring a higher level of contribution to work. So I think that's a key lesson for our line organization within Chemours. So.
Mark, we got about 60 seconds. Any final thoughts? I wanted to give you some space to answer that question as well.
Well, our senior leadership had felt that we were going to kind of fall on our face at the beginning, and we didn't. And so that kind of, like Badar said, kind of woke them up, and now they think, okay, this can be done this way. So we'll see what happens.
I've got about 6 ideas for follow-up events. Badar, Mike, or follow-up topics. Badar, Mike, and Mark, thank you all so much. This has been fascinating. I've enjoyed it. It's been fun and informative. And to the audience, feel free to send it out in your organizations. It's 12 noon. Unfortunately, we're done. Look for the email follow-up at the end of the day. Take care of yourself and each other.